What do you do when you have animals that are stressing you out and not working for you? Maybe you have the wrong animals for your homestead. Here's an example of why we don't have ducks or geese anymore and what we do instead. Make a list of what you're looking for in an animal, such as do you want eggs, meat, or do you want an animal that is able to feed itself from what you either grow or it harvests. We started with geese and ducks early on in our homestead, and we found that they were not the right animal for us. And the reasons were geese are aggressive, and we free-ranged our geese, and they were attacking and making our daughter feel unsafe on our property. They're extremely loud. Be nice. And extremely aggressive. Even though they were hand raised, they still attacked our daughter. So that was one con on the geese, which made it stressful. The other con was that despite looking like a very large animal, after dressing and removing the feathers and the down, they yielded very little meat. So that was another con. The third con was that they were very hard to butcher. And we decided to pluck them, and we did that for a couple of years. It was a pain. If you've ever butchered a goose, you'll know how much work that is. And so we started skinning them, and that made their yield even less. It wasn't something that was working really well for us. So after reevaluating that, we got ducks for meat and eggs, pecan for meat and some runner ducks for eggs. And we first discovered after they started laying that we couldn't digest the eggs. A lot of people have allergies to duck eggs. We were sadly one of the people that could not eat duck eggs. So we focused on the pecan, and we thought this will be awesome. They were easier to pluck than a goose, but I would say they were still extremely difficult. And what we found is, since we couldn't eat the eggs, we wanted something that could raise its own duckling. We wanted a sustainable flock, but the problem was that the mothers weren't very attentive and they weren't very broody. And when they would sit on their eggs, we found that a lot of them weren't fertile. The drakes get so big that they have a hard time mating, and a lot of the eggs weren't fertilized. So even though we tried to incubate the eggs, we found the same thing, as most didn't develop because they weren't fertile. And we really wanted to avoid the danger of heat lamps and the cost of electricity, and mainly the mess. Ducklings are extremely messy to raise. So we were pretty sad for a while about how the ducks and the geese weren't really working for us. They were causing more stress, and we had more problems and more cons than pros for raising them. So we did some research, and we found Muscovies. And what we found with Muscovies was night and day difference. They had beautiful carcasses. They were plump. They were fairly easy to pluck, surprisingly. Compared to pecan and compared to a goose, they were easy. Not only that, but they had extremely gourmet meat. I got French white Muscovies, and the first year that they started laying, all of the hens went broody, and they typically have 3 clutches of eggs per year. That means one hen will set and raise 3 clutches a year. They raise them all by themselves, so there's no mess, no electricity, and I don't have to do the raising. So Muscovies are quiet ducks. You can keep them in a suburban backyard and no one will know that you have ducks. They don't quack, they don't honk like a goose, and they're extremely quiet. Not only that, but they're friendly and tame. Even the drakes are not aggressive. I have never been attacked by a Muscovy. They actually wag their tails like puppy dogs and follow you around. They're extremely personable. But not only that, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a terrible problem with slugs eating our vegetable starts. I went from losing nearly every single vegetable start to not having to do anything about slugs. I haven't seen a slug at all in the last 2 years. The Muscovies eat the slugs. I love that they harvest their bugs and grubs. Geese are vegetarian. Ducks will eat some bugs, but Muscovies are actual bug connoisseurs. They will hunt flies. If you Google dairy farms and Muscovies, they use them for fly control. Our fly population on our cattle dropped significantly, which had been a problem that I didn't enjoy. So Muscovies have been the perfect fit for us. I absolutely love our Muscovies. They're excellent mothers. For us, changing from ducks and geese to Muscovy, we were a little sad to not have our geese anymore, but we found that the stress of raising animals that didn't fit our needs was not worth it. So a way to save money and save stress is to find an animal that works for you and your needs. Each person's needs and wants and situation is going to be different. If you find one that works for your family, it goes from being a stressful headache to something that brings you joy and ease. We've had snow peas coming out our ears. So the chickens won't eat them, but the ducks will. The Muscovies or Muscovy. How do you pronounce it? I've always heard Muscovy. And yes, their wings are nibbled on, despite roaming 13 acres, having mealworms, raw milk added to their feed, and black soldier fly larvae. Anyway, their protein's really high. I'd say almost probably 30%. And yet, white ducks are curious, and they nibble on the blood feathers, which when they're coming in, these tubes below the actual feather are full of blood. They have a vein in them. And when they're nibbled on by a duck beak, they get bloody, and the red just seems to attract them more. They've almost grown out of their blood feather stage. Oh, I can't wait. Some of them are pretty bad. I love how they wag their tails like pups. Tink does not like that I love them so much, though. Does the Tink? Tink does not like that I love the ducks. Even though she gets quite jealous of them. She's a good girl.